The summit brings together Afghanistan's neighbors and other regional powers. Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met with Iranian and Turkish foreign ministers ahead of the summit and discussed bilateral cooperation. Dr. S. Jaishankar also visited the Dushanbe-Chortut Highway Project site and he lauded the Border Roads Organization for the 8-lane highway. Ahead of the summit, the leaders of all the participating nations came together for a photo op, a family photo. And as you can see, the summit brings together the foreign ministers of India and Pakistan together for the first time since 2019. Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and Pakistan Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi were seen in the same platform, on the same stage for the first time since 2019 during their photo op session. Now, meanwhile, Tajikistan President said that the last 4 decades has shown that there is no military solution to the Afghanistan crisis. Joining us on this broadcast is senior journalist Amar Shaheen, who's joining us live from Karachi. Amar, thank you so much for joining us on WION. Now, we also heard Afghan President earlier, and he said that peace, lasting peace in Afghanistan will not just mean peace in Afghanistan, but it will also bring prosperity to the entire region. What is the sense in Pakistan? Does that hold true for the people of Pakistan and India as well?
I don't see a lot of sense in negotiating with terrorists, releasing terrorists on your own soil with the hope that the terrorists will stop terrorizing civilians and journalists and all those people that the Afghan president was talking about. I think strategically, even when that was happening and even on your channel, I was saying the same thing. How can you expect murderers and terrorists and rapists to come clean and say, we're not going to do it anymore because the Afghan president and the rest of the world is telling us not to do it? Talks are important, of course, but negotiating and releasing terrorists back to the battlefield where they kill journalists and civilians and government authorities makes zero sense. And this is the kind of strategy that within Pakistan we've always been outspoken against. Terrorism, violence, war, military solution is never a solution because these are just oxymorons of a solution. So in Pakistan, the sense is that this summit is more about India and Pakistan rather than the Afghan issue, because the Afghan issue is predominantly seen here as an ongoing issue, something that's not going to be, realistically speaking, create any difference. Even in this speech that you were playing just before you asked me this question, the Afghan president was urging the international community and the participants of this conference perhaps to do something. I don't understand what they can do. I mean, how do you tell the Taliban, the murderers of millions of people, to stop being Taliban? And how does India or Pakistan or all of the more than a dozen countries, what do they do about it? What can they do about it? How do they get rid of terrorism? In Pakistan, the focus is more about what will happen given the fact that, very rightly so, 2019 was when the Article 370 of the Indian Constitution was abrogated. And this is when Pakistan recalled their envoys and suspended all trade ties. And since then, it was kind of downhill till it came back to the point where the Chief of Army Staff spoke about how they need to have better relationship with India. The Prime Minister of India also sent nice messages to the government of Pakistan, the people of Pakistan on the Independence Day. And it kind of thawed the bad relationship between the two countries. But just like Afghanistan, even the relationship between two countries is, people start expecting too much to come out of it, although it fluctuates between on the brink of war to we will be talking to each other and perhaps sending back our own envoys. So we cannot expect too much. Maybe we can expect that after this summit, the prime ministers might be meeting in the SAARC summit, but this is all hearsay. This is all, there was so much speculation that the two foreign ministers of India and Pakistan are going to meet, although I don't understand how and where they can meet. It's a 2-day visit for the Indian foreign minister. But the whole idea is that people need to really focus on the fact that India needs to focus on the fact that if the peaceful messages are coming from the military establishment, India needs to really focus on the priorities that India should try to speak to the civilian authorities in Pakistan. Because if you leave peace talks and foreign policy to the chief staff of Pakistan, then uh, we understand that the military or industry would never want a finite and final solution of the problems between India and Pakistan. We'll be tiptoeing between brink of war and like doing some maybe establishing trade ties once again. But what real action can be taken in these summits? We need to start talking about the things. Of course, the situation in Afghanistan is really bad, but then in Pakistan and in India, there are gross violations of human rights. If you talk about, and these sensitive things, we need to start getting into the habit of talking about these sensitive things. I have no worries if you talk to Taliban, but negotiating with them and releasing their terrorist warlords is just another game. Similarly, Pakistan needs to have that patience to listen to India about what it alleges as cross-border terrorism. And India also needs to have that patience to talk about Kashmir. India can disagree, but talks are very important. And this time the talks need to enhance the threshold of the discussion so we can go somewhere else rather than just this ping pong between these issues that never get resolved.
Absolutely, Emmer. No meeting has been scheduled between the foreign ministers of India and Pakistan in this summit, but like you mentioned, it is a two-day summit. It remains to be seen if there will be a pull aside and they will have a quiet word on the sidelines of this summit. Now, you mentioned a lot of issues there between India and Pakistan, certain issues dating back decades, and there is apprehension in the Indian leadership as well about which has always maintained that terror and talks cannot go hand in hand. But India and Pakistan recently reiterated the ceasefire agreement on the line of control, and the people of India and Pakistan are certainly hopeful of lasting peace. However, let's just focus on Afghanistan. You were mentioning about the Taliban, how the Afghan government released thousands of Taliban fighters, and it has resulted in the fourth quarter, since the peace talks started, a 45% jump in violence and civilian deaths in Afghanistan since a year before. So the peace talks between the Taliban Afghan government and the others in Doha certainly do not appear to be making much headway, isn't it?
Yes, and you'll be living in a fool's paradise to think that it would make any difference. And listening to the Afghan president are urging other countries to send message in support of a ceasefire. That's not how ceasefire works. And history has told us again and again that's not how it works. There has to be a more practical solution to, when you're dealing with terrorists, when you're dealing with murderers, then the people who have been terrorized, murdered, there's this whole element of justice which the United States of America and Afghanistan and the rest of us are very easily forget, that these people took lives of hundreds of thousands, millions of people over the decades. These people, if you I have this difference of opinion when it comes to India and Pakistan talking to each other, because I feel there's a difference between talking to each other and what's happening in Afghanistan. What's happening in Afghanistan is negotiations with the terrorists. America wants to leave. America wants a safe exit. America is going to create another Vietnam, and they're kind of stuck. They leave. Or interest wants them to stay there. Right. And this is just an eye wash for the world to see that the leaders are trying to do something. But does anyone really expect peace to come out of these impractical steps, urging people, urging countries to condemn violence? How does that work?
Absolutely. Emmer, you mentioned how the Taliban has destroyed the peace process as far as Afghanistan are concerned, killed millions of people. And I think the general consensus, and the Afghan leaders have also mentioned at the Heart of Asia summit, is that Taliban must give up violence. And it is a known fact that Pakistan's ISI has in the past supported the Taliban as far as infrastructure is concerned, as far as arms and ammunition is concerned. Has the Pakistani ISI stopped doing it? Has the Pakistani ISI stopped all support to the Taliban, or is it still continuing?
Pakistan keeps changing its stances on the global front, but on the grassroots level, it's not so easy to stop supporting a violent organization or a terrorist organization once you have supported that organization in the first place. Because let's not forget, people wearing uniforms carrying guns and people not wearing uniforms and carrying guns, when they work with each other for decades, they can't be ordered to have an operation against the people that were their allies. So that's the ground reality of Pakistan, where these people have worked very closely together. And obviously, you know, when the military changed its stance on the insistence after the war on terror of the United States and more pressure from the international community, you know, the state policy may change, but then the people, the operatives, the military operatives on the grassroots level, they have a very different opinion about the freedom fighters that they call the Taliban. So, and also there's a differentiation between the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which are the bad Taliban, and then the Taliban, which are the Afghan Taliban, which are not you know, propagated as bad Taliban. And even amongst the bad Taliban, within that group of bad Taliban, let's not forget Ehsanullah Ehsan was one of the bad Taliban who murdered our school children, and he came on television to say that he murdered our school children. And once he was arrested, he was either let off, or the military says he escaped from the clutches of the intelligence agencies and security forces, and he is abroad. Even while this terrorist was under the custody of the Pakistani security forces, he came to our TV channel, the TV channel I used to work for at that time, and he gave an interview like a free citizen of the state. So states really need to start doing things practically.
Right.
And this rhetoric is too exposed to the rest of the world, to the citizens of those respective countries. They understand that negotiating with Ehsanullah Ehsan of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan or the terrorists of the Taliban in Afghanistan is going to reap the same results that we are showing. This is happening in Pakistan. It's a sensitive issue. As a journalist in Pakistan, this is as far as I can go to comment on how the military establishment and its selected and supported government right now are kind of, you know, taking these freedom fighters or terrorists, whatever you want to call them, depends on which side of the border you're at. These people are being supported, and we've been conducting all these interviews with the leaders of, let's say, Jamaat-ud-Dawa, and they have full confidence in the military and the Pakistani government that whatever they're doing under international pressure, and that indeed in the hearts of their hearts, those Jamaat-ud-Dawa and other factions, those people think that the government at the end of the day and the military organization will come to their aid against the perceived enemies.
Emir Shine, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast. We continue our focus on the Heart of Asia Summit, and I just hope the world stops the differentiation between bad terrorists and good terrorists, because any violence against innocent civilians must be condemned. WION's Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik is in Dushanbe, Tajikistan, and he's tracking all the developments at the conference. He brings us this latest report.
Well, absolutely. The Heart of Asia Istanbul process, meeting of the foreign ministers, is currently ongoing. The first session has winded up, and now the speeches of the foreign ministers are to follow. During the break, the Afghan foreign minister, I happened to have spoken to him, and he said that it is upon the regional powers, the regional countries, to get together and condemn the immense use of violence, and that the other side is not willing, referring to the Afghan Taliban. This is what Hanif Atmat, the Afghan foreign minister, had said.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.